Hello everyone and welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith. Today we're going to be covering a game that I have been waiting to showcase on my channel for a little bit. And that game, my friends, is Too Many Bones, a dice building RPG by Adam and Josh Carlson of Chip Theory Games. The credits right there on the back will give you an idea of the artist, the writer, the publisher, of course, who I already mentioned, the logo dice art, all that kind of stuff right there on the back of the book. This is the rule book in front of me, so you can see this for yourself. One of the reasons that really drew this game to me personally was because being an avid solo gamer myself, this game's theme, production quality, components, look and feel of the art, everything about it just sucked me right in. And as soon as I saw it, I knew this was going to be a game I was going to be able to sink my teeth into and really try to master. From what I understand from watching videos with Adam and Josh that they created on their YouTube channel as well, was they talked a lot about making this game not a game that you can just run through. This isn't one of those games where you're just going to win every single time. Now, as you play it and you gain experience and you become more familiar with the game, your odds probably increase because you know what you're doing. You can build a character specific to your needs and tailor it to try to beat a specific tyrant, so that's really useful. However, when you're first starting out like myself right now, you're going to get leveled at times. You are going to get beat, and there's a learning curve behind the game itself, like most games, but in this one, it's a challenge. It's a game that's meant to challenge you, and I really enjoy that. So let's get right into really the purpose of this video, and that is to kind of give you guys an overview of essentially the setup. Like, how do you get this thing to the table in a decent amount of time? I'm just going to quickly go over, or as quick as I can, go over, which will likely take the length of the video, go over all the different components and different items here, just to kind of give you an idea of how to set up for your first turn, right? Kind of a running start, essentially. So the rule book lays it out fairly well, so you can follow that along pretty good. But at the same time, I just wanted to show you visually because I think that just makes more sense. So the very first thing you want to do when you go ahead at the very beginning is it's never a bad idea per se to know who you're going to play first. Now, you don't have to necessarily pick your character before or after you pick your tyrant. Your tyrant is going to be your overarching villain per se in this persistent world, or not persistent, but this world here. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's called Draylor, or Daylor. So I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. You can thrash me in the comments if I've thrown that sideways. But essentially, you can pick your player to whichever tyrant you want. Inside the base game itself, it comes with 4 different characters. You're seeing one of them here in Patches. Patches is very much a medic character. You can even see it based on the medic symbol there. He's melee. He's got some innate abilities, which we'll go over later on if I get to that in this particular video. But essentially, his character is a healing character. He's there to really help you out. Now, the coolest thing about this is when you pick a character, you don't just get their playmat and all the different skill dice you can essentially unlock over time and all this kind of stuff. You actually get a reference sheet that you can read, giving you a little bit of a story on kind of who Patches is, what these dice do for him, and essentially what the main focal point of his abilities are. Also on the back, it even gives you things like a beginner build and strategy, essentially. So you can take a look at these two for strats and skills and go, okay, well, I can follow this to start. Gives you a good leg up at the very beginning of your journey when you don't know much about the game itself. Other things here just talk about innate abilities, all kinds of little things that we'll get to as we go. But you know what? When I first started this, I thought it was a lot to take in, but after a few plays, I actually found it very intuitive and very comfortable to use this, or to use these reference sheets with these die, and you'll see kind of how that pans out as I go through my playthrough in future episodes. So the first thing you do essentially, or we'll do anyway, is we're going to go ahead and pick our tyrant. Now, in the base game, you're going to get a stack of tyrant chips. These are going to basically be all of your different tyrants. So they're very cool looking. They've all got different abilities and all this kind of stuff. They all come with a specific die that's for them. So they've all got colors, and the colors actually kind of blend with the colors right there. So those colors will associate themselves with the color of the enemy. So in this case, I've chosen Drellin as my very first, Drellin Paleface, that is, as my very first tyrant that I'm going to go after. Now, when I pick him, he comes along with his corresponding tyrant die. So now what would normally happen is the game, or the rule book says, you just essentially take these 2 pieces if you've chosen this tyrant to fight. And there's a method to this. You don't have to necessarily do what I did here, lay them all out and just pick one. When you're first starting, probably recommend that you either fight Nom, probably, or Drellin. These would probably be the likely two, if you're going to do this solo, that you should be fighting against to start. Because they're shorter campaigns, they go over shorter amount of progress points. Progress points are what you need to get through encounters in order to get to the final encounter of a fight with either of these two tyrants. So you're only ever fighting one tyrant at a time. But essentially, these are the two shortest ones. These are going to take you a little longer, be a little more meatier, and you won't get through this in a quicker amount of time. And they're also likely to be more challenging as you go further along. But the cool part is your character has much longer time to progress and unlock other dice, which is really cool. So we'll put these guys aside for now. So essentially, if we decide to go with Drellin Paleface as our character, then what you do is you go through your deck. Now, I've already kind of pulled a bunch of things out here in front of you, or in front of us, I should say. These things here, you'll see underneath this deck. This is essentially what you'll see when you open up the box. You get like Nom, he has a tyrant encounter that goes with him, right? And then you get like, one of the other bosses is Molmesh. And he's got a certain number of tyrant encounters with him that are behind him. And then the next, the next, and the next. I'm sorry that I'm kind of crumbling these all together in a really terrible pattern. But essentially, you've got a tyrant encounter or encounters with each one. And some have 2, some have 3, some have 1. But regardless, you want to find yours, which I've already done. You pull them out and you find any tyrant encounters that involve him. You set them aside, you get ready. Now, normally you would take this chip and you take this die and you just go like this and put it on his card. And you just leave it there until he's ready to come into the battle and fight you. If you've purchased the optional add-on of the Land of Delor, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, if you purchase this, then you can actually, as you can see here, there's kind of like circular noted spots for the actual chips to sit in. There's one, here for the shortest campaign. This is the medium and this is the longest from what I understand, or maybe it's the other way around. Could be wrong on that. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so the longest one goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So your shortest one will land here. So essentially if we're playing Drellin, he's going to end up here. Now, how do you know that? How do you know whether it's here, here, or here? Which path are you taking? Well, you know that based on the number of days that you have in order to win, essentially. And then these are progress points. So if your day counter gets to 10 and you haven't defeated him, well, then you've lost. But you just need 6 progress points to get to him. And then essentially if you have 10 days to get rid of him or take that tyrant down. So what it's doing there is if you succeed at every encounter you run across, you'll likely get a progress point every time. What does a progress point do? Well, a progress point is tracked when you buy this optional upgrade, at least, on this kind of this mat. And you'll go from the main location here and you'll track it up. 1. Every single time you do an encounter, you're moving closer to your tyrant, essentially, right? So you're going 1, 2, 3, this is 4, this is 5, and then once you get to 6, you've made it to Shalefist. And once you made it to Shalefist, you essentially, from this point on, can continue to encounter Drellin Paleface over and over and over until you run out of days to take him down. Now, what might not work out for you is you may play an encounter and you may make it to here successfully, and then on the second one you may fail, which means you don't get that progress point, but you burnt a day. Now, what do days come into play? Days come into play using this little counter here. Now, normally, if you just bought the base game and you didn't purchase this mat, you're tracking this with a card, which, it's right here, the day counter card. So it just essentially sits on here, and of course, whatever it's pointing at is whatever day it is. So you just flip it around till you get to 1, and every single day that goes by, which is essentially a round in the game, you flip this over to the next day. So if you're failing encounters, this is ticking up and it's coming, you're racing against the clock. You don't have all day to just sit there. The game will come to haunt you if you begin to fail encounters. The cool thing with this mat is it allows you to just drop this little token right inside the mat itself, and bam, you've got kind of like a turn tracker where you can actually spin this thing, and sorry, my hands are kind of gooped up right now, but you can spin it like that, essentially. So, bam, and you can like kind of move it along the track, which I think is like really, really cool, and it sits perfectly cut, just like these neoprene mats over here with the dice. Everything's cut perfect, and it actually is really, really cool. So this is essentially how you set the map up, and of course your progress chip starts in Obendar at the very beginning. So there it is. There's your mat. there's your Tyrant encounter selected, ready to go. Now at this very point, you've got everything kind of set up that way. The next thing you need to do is start to create your deck, essentially. Now this is going to be like your encounter deck. So if you're playing solo, you're going to have these types of cards sitting in front of you. You have a deck that's called Special Encounters, which has a number of special encounters. You have an encounter deck that specifies solo at the very bottom and has numbered 1 to 12 different solo encounters. And then you have this one here that's noted general, which is used for co-op adventures with friends of a party of 2 or more. And technically, if you're going to play solo, like this is essentially how they, and this can be confusing. They call this solo, meaning legitimately using only one gear lock. If I chose to use 2 gear locks and solo both of them, I would then use the general encounter deck. So solo in this case, or at least in this game, means literally only use 1 gear lock. If you're using more than one, do not use this pile. That's essentially what they're saying. And that's not always the same with every single game, but just kind of a heads up on that. So what you're going to do here is you're going to go ahead and you're going to take a look at your Tyrant's card, and you're going to look right here for this particular day marker, which we talked about, which is a 10. This is how many days we have to defeat him, essentially. And what you do is you draw a number of these cards -3. And I'll show you why you do -3, because you might be sitting there going, why the heck would you do -3? Now, this is just special for, this is at least just set up for a solo one. This is the way to do it. So again, we're playing with 1 character. So we'd be grabbing from the solo deck here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to rip off about, I'll split the deck just so that it's, because I've seen the top card. And essentially what we do is we just pull out 7 cards. We pull out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now normally if I was off camera, which I will do when I'm off camera, is I'll shuffle those up for sure, just so that they're kind of nice and tidy. Then what you're going to do is now you've got 7 of the 10 days kind of set or preset. Then what you're going to do is you're going to come to the special encounter deck, and you're going to look for the special encounters that are listed 1 through 3. So there's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. And those are the cards you're going to add to get you to 10. So now you have 10 cards created for your encounter deck. So you can kind of see that even using the solo deck, just playing alone, there's a lot of, you can't predict how this game's going to pan out encounter-wise, and you certainly won't be able to predict it when you're playing with more than 1 character at once. Because there's quite a few encounters, and they're tailor-made every single time you play the game, which is very cool. Now what you do is you take that Tyrant encounter, and you're going to take that card and you're going to add it to this deck. You're obviously going to do much better shuffling than I'm doing right now, which is, I'm going to shuffle this after the video, of course. But essentially you're putting this deck together and bam, you've got yourself your encounter deck and you're done. This is what's going to be essentially the start. Now what I just made a mistake in doing, which I just realized, is your special encounters, which I gummed this up real good. So sorry, let me clarify this. These ones here, the regular encounters and the Tyrant encounters, all get shuffled together. What doesn't get shuffled in are these special encounters when you're playing solo. These are like your starting adventures. They essentially are giving you a taste. They're giving you easier encounters, a way to level up, and all that kind of stuff. When you put these encounters in your deck, you put them in numbers. So it's 1, 2, 3. So we want the first one on top, second one after that, third one after that. When you're done shuffling this deck, you just put them on top. And so what it's doing is it's guaranteeing you a little bit of a chance for success and for training points in the first 3 days of your journey. Now it doesn't guarantee it because you can still fail, but it gives you a helping hand to start. After that, you're on your own and the game starts getting really nasty, or I shouldn't say really nasty, it's out of your control at that point. So essentially you've built your deck. Now you can take all of these cards that are sitting here, and the only way a special encounter may come back into play is if maybe a Tyrant or some other event brings it back in. So at this point you're done card-wise, and you can just put this beside your battle mat or wherever you really want to put it. Drellin can sit like this. I usually just put his die on his mat, and you're kind of set in terms of the encounter. Now the next thing you do is you focus on your Trove and your Loot decks. So your Trove and Loot decks kind of need a space of their own to sit as well. So for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just put them right next to my battle mat here. So you take your Trove Loot and you just kind of put it right beside the initiative track. You can really put it wherever you want, but this is where the game itself specifies to land them. And you go like this. Now what's really cool with these cards is that you'll notice that these cards actually have different like lock abilities on them. So loot is just straight up unlocked. When you get loot, you flip it over and you get it. Trove loot runs down a whole series of paths that are very, very interesting that involve these particular unlocking type dice. And they're called lever, trip, and force. And there are specific colors for each one, essentially. So you've got 3 different ones here. And really how this works, I'll have to explain during gameplay because it's a little complex and we don't have the time right here. But these are the 4 dice which come into play when you're trying to essentially unlock or go through these 3 checks in order to break into a trove loot, which is your best type of loot you can possibly come across. So these dice, you can just set them to the side. I usually just put them close to the trove loot, just to signify once you get one, you might as well grab the dice because you'll be doing a lot of rolling, or your friends will be helping you to break into it. Either way, you've got a chance. So that's essentially loot and trove loot. So you shuffle both of those up and stuff like that and put them there. Now the next thing you do is you create a baddie deck. You're creating your baddies. So in the base game you have all these little towers. So you've got a whole bunch of 1s, you've got a whole bunch of 5-point baddies. So these are 1-point baddies, 5-point baddies, and 20-point baddies. So when you're building your game out, you just take your tyrant and you take a look at the colors specified at the bottom of this card. These are going to tell you the baddie types, essentially, that are going to be in the game. If you're very familiar with things like, I guess, Lord of the Rings, the card game, and building the encounter deck, this is your way of doing this, but with chips. Think of it that way. So essentially, you're looking for mushrooms, you're looking for whatever the heck that is, looks like some type of arrowhead and a paw. And as long as you got those covered, you're good. So essentially, you can, I've already kind of gone ahead, kind of, I should say, and sort of put these into the stacks that belong. So this one is out. These blues are all not in, and the reds are not in. So actually, this might be the whole this whole pile might not be in. So this whole pile of 1s isn't even part of it. So we can just put them aside. This whole pile of 1s. Now you might be going, how the heck did you know that? I already have them sorted by color. They're situated right there. You can kind of see it right there in the corner. So yes, we do need the arrowhead one. So these guys will be coming in. So we're gonna get all these guys. We're gonna be getting these guys, and we're gonna be getting these. So really this whole pile. So then what you essentially do is you can really shuffle these up however you want. Now I've got my 3 different types kind of already spanned out for the 1s anyway. You can lay them out however you want. You can shuffle them up however you want. I can just kind of start stacking them randomly in order to make sure they're shuffled. And boom, there you go. So you've got a whole bunch of 1s, and your 1s are now created. So you can really put these wherever you want. In the game, it specifies to kind of leave it, you know, up here in front of everything, which isn't a bad idea. The other thing you get, which I'll lay out right now, just for ease of use, or just so you guys understand, is these chips line up with the particular lanes on this battle mat. So when you're fighting characters and they come into play, they go into the lanes as per the number. So the first baddie goes into lane 1, second baddie lane 2, third baddie lane 3 and 4, and they'll come in as they come in. As you kill, new ones may come in, or maybe there's no other baddies in the queue. So then it's just once they're dead, they're dead. Essentially, all this is doing is just letting you know which baddie, if he ends up here to start, but then he ends up over here and dies, you know that the next baddie coming in is going to come into this lane. It's just a tracker. It's a way of tracking. So what you do for setup is essentially just put these above the battle mat, and now you've got kind of those things ready to go. When the first baddie comes in, he's going to take the 1 chip, and he's going to land in whichever lane he is based on whether he's ranged or melee. So sounds kind of convoluted, but it really, really isn't. And you get really used to it very quickly. So then you go ahead and you grab the initiative dice. So these initiative dice will sit, I usually just put them right on top of the chip itself. You can put them wherever you want, but you got them all here. And these are going to end up going into the initiative meter when you decide how a battle is going to be panned out. And really this is out of your control, so you're not really deciding. It'll be on the chip itself. So I got the 1s here situated and done. So then you go through your 5s, and I'm going to do this part off camera. So essentially just, you go through the same motion I did with the 1s. You go through the 5s, you find all the ones that tailor to the mushroom, the spearhead, and the paw. You pull out the other ones and you throw them aside. Do the same for the 20. So at the end of the day, you'll probably have stacks that look something like this you know, by the end of it, once you filter them out. What that does is it's tailoring the monsters or baddies to a specific boss or tyrant, which is really cool because it means every time you play a tyrant, you're not going to see same type of things. Your encounters are changing. Your path is changing in terms of how long you've got, all this kind of stuff. Your loot and your trove loot's always different. Very, very cool. So that's essentially that. Now that is done, then of course you can choose your gear lock. Now, I chose my gear lock in advance. You can choose your gear lock ahead of time, after, whatever you want to do. For me, I chose patches. The reason I chose patches is very simplistic. I just looked at, and because I'm very new to the game myself, I just looked and said, hey, difficulty-wise for co-op, a 1 tick. You can kind of see that with the gold thing there. And then for solo, 2. So he was labeled as the easiest solo player to play with. And the reason being is that he's a medic. So he's going to help himself and me out by healing himself. That's his innate ability, is recovery. Whenever you have words that make no sense or dice faces that don't make any sense. So when you grab patches from the box, he comes with his own set of dice. This looks really confusing because there's a lot of dice here, but it really is simplistic and once you understand what's going on. These 4 dice here correlate to these dice here. When you train something, essentially the dice goes in. So if I trained, dexterity up, you get 1 dexterity. If I train up health with a training point, no, you gain training points by doing encounters, and the encounter will tell you if you get a training point. If you get that training point, you can up your skill, right? These ones you can do successfully every single time you complete an encounter that has a training point. You can flip them all day long, keep going up and up and up and up. No big deal. But for attack and defense, you literally have to train them. You have to roll the dice equal to what you have already existing between the 2 spots plus 1. So essentially, if you're going to try to train attack right now, you'd be rolling 2 attack dice. And if you get any bones on them, you failed to upgrade your attack and you're not allowed to use a training point. And that's why you have to use it somewhere else. So again, it's kind of crazy. And I'll show you that stuff later, but it's really simplistic once you actually kind of get your head around it. So what I've done here is I've labeled, you can see in the top corners, on the top left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way through to 16. Why did I do that? Because it correlates with all the numbers on the skill. So it just makes it easy. So when I unlock a dice, I just go, oh, okay, fast hands, second in from the top, boom, it's this dice right here. Like, just makes life easy. So if you do that for yourself, you're giving yourself an advantage. This is the initiative die. This is also going to come into play when the initiative comes into play from the monster you're fighting. You will roll your dice and you will have your initiative in the track. That's all that is. It sits in your kind of setup area over here, along with, of course, your player chip. And for me, it's patches. So essentially what I've done here is I've run through not everything, but I kind of have. I've almost gone through everything. I'm going to probably stop it right here, and I think I'll pick it up in the next video and just catch up on any loose ends that I might have missed. But this is essentially it. So in this one video, even explaining through all of that, I managed to set up the majority of the game. I'll come back in the second part of this, if necessary, and just talk about anything that I missed, and then we can kind of jump right into it and see what happens. I'm really excited. Hope you guys are excited. We'll jump into this journey together and have a lot of fun. So, till the next time, people, keep rolling solo.